In a dingy Berlin pub with a hole in the wall, you could lose a limb in, and probably someone had. Old Owen was having a worse night than usual. Some bloke named Neil barged in demanding to see the resident in the basement. Owen, bless his soon-to-be charred soul, wasn't having it. "No peace down there, mate," he croaked. "Just pain, suffering, and a questionable smell." Neil, apparently not grasping the concept of danger, offered Owen $2,000 for a quick goodbye with his dead wife. Owen, clearly not charging enough for his troubles, told him to get lost. Once Neil was gone, and hopefully not to the basement, Owen made a video will for the next owner. "Congratulations," he rasped into the camera. "You've inherited Baghead, a basement-dwelling nightmare fond of escape attempts and casual mayhem." Turns out, owning the pub also meant being Baghead's jailer. They got the fun combo of death and disease. Owen bravely declared he'd try to break the curse tonight, adding with a wink, "Don't bet on me seeing sunrise." Cut to the basement, where Baghead, looking like she'd lost a fight with a lawnmower, was tied to a chair. Owen's grand plan? Arson. Sadly, his fire-starting skills were worse than his landlord's skills. Baghead survived, looking slightly toasted. Owen, not so much. Meanwhile, in London, Iris and her bestie Katie were discussing the finer points of being broke. Evicted Iris needed a place to crash, preferably one that didn't involve sharing a sleeping bag with a badger. Then the solicitor called with the delightful news. Daddy Dearest was dead, and Iris had inherited a charming pub in Berlin. Just what every cash-strapped girl dreams of. Jet-lagged and slightly traumatized, Iris arrived in Berlin to find her dear old dad looking extra crispy. Turns out, died at the beginning meant extra crispy, and that Iris was Owen's long-lost daughter. The solicitor, radiating the cheery vibes of a funeral director, informed her she'd inherited a pub. Surprise? Iris, who apparently knew her dad about as well as she knew astrophysics, was shocked. The solicitor gave her a tour of the place, which looked like it had last been renovated when the dinosaurs were still doing the tango. "Needs a bit of work," he understated, suggesting a quick sale. Iris, suddenly realizing she was now the proud owner of a fire trap, asked for some time to think. Time and a place to sleep since, homeless. The solicitor looked like he wanted to argue, but couldn't deny a grieving, homeless orphan a roof over her head, even if that roof was likely to cave in. That night, Iris called Katie. "Dad's a kebab," she announced, not exactly overflowing with grief. Turns out Daddy Dearest had done a disappearing act years ago. Katie, bless her heart, promised to hop on the next flight to Berlin for moral support and probably to prevent Iris from accidentally setting fire to the place again. Around midnight, Iris was dreaming of winning the lottery when an incessant buzzing noise woke her up. It seemed to be coming from the basement. Exploring the creepy, cobweb-infested pub, which, let's be honest, was probably haunted even before the crispy dad incident, Iris stumbled upon the basement door. It was adorned with enough arcane symbols to make a Ouija board blush, but alas, locked tighter than a drum. Suddenly, a floorboard creaked behind her. Jumping like a startled cat, she spun around to find Neil, who really needed to talk to his wife, in the basement. Iris, understandably confused, insisted the only thing down there was probably dust bunnies the size of small dogs. Neil, bless his delusional little heart, waved a wad of cash, $4,000, under her nose. Suddenly, those dust bunnies seemed a lot less scary. Iris, thinking of her precarious financial situation, pocketed the cash. "I don't have the key right now," she fibbed smoothly. "Come back tomorrow, because who needs common sense when you have 4,000 euros? The next morning, Iris met with the solicitor, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. "I've decided," she chirped. "I'm keeping the pub." The solicitor looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Selling a haunted, fire-damaged pub was easy. Dealing with the new owner who insisted on living in it, not so much. He handed over the ancient deed, which probably had clauses about demonic possessions in the fine print, a set of keys, and a cassette tape labeled, "From Owen with Love," and probably a few screams. That evening, Katie arrived, ready to provide emotional support and possibly an exorcism. Iris filled her in about Neil and his basement wife, flashing the $4,000 like a winning lottery ticket. Katie, ever the voice of reason, pointed out that living in a haunted murder pub might not be the smartest move. Iris, however, saw dollar signs. "Think of the tourism potential," she declared, envisioning guided tours of the Baghead experience. Later, Neil showed up, practically vibrating with anticipation. The trio descended into the basement, which was darker than a politician's soul. 2 chairs sat forlornly in the middle of the room, looking suspiciously like props in a horror movie. Neil, ignoring the obvious signs of impending doom, focused on a large hole in the wall, beckoning his wife to come out. Iris and Katie, meanwhile, were busy exchanging sarcastic whispers about Neil's sanity. Then it happened. Out of the shadows shuffled Baghead. Imagine a burlap sack filled with rage and bad hair day. That's Baghead. Ignoring Neil completely, she lumbered towards Iris. Everyone braced for a bloodbath, but then something bizarre occurred. Iris, channeling some unknown inner authority, told Baghead to stop, and Baghead obeyed. Iris, feeling rather empowered and only slightly terrified, pointed to a chair. Baghead sat. Katie and Neil just stared, mouths agape. This was going to be an interesting tendency. Neil, still convinced he was about to have a conjugal visit with his deceased wife, presented Baghead with Sarah's ring. Baghead promptly popped it in her mouth like a particularly macabre tic-tac. Neil, apparently following some bizarre afterlife etiquette, strapped her to the chair. Baghead rewarded him with a scream that could curdle milk at 20 paces. Her hands twisted into gnarled claws. Neil, with the flourish of a magician revealing his assistant, whipped off the bag. Surprise! It wasn't Sarah. It was Neil's mom, who'd shuffled off this mortal coil 20 years prior. Neil was, to put it mildly, confused. "Mom?" I ordered Sarah, he might as well have said. He started asking her about her suicide, but Mom kept her answers as vague as a politician's promises. Then her eyes went blacker than a comedian's heart. "I never wanted kids," she hissed. "Especially you." And just when you thought things couldn't get weirder, she offered him a kiss, a wet, slobbery, possibly demonic kiss. She vanished and reappeared, pinning Neil to the ground and, let's just say, regurgitating an unholy amount of water. It was Iris, displaying a remarkable amount of calm amidst the chaos, who yelled, "Baghead, stop!" and shoved the bag back on the creature's head. As if hitting a reset button, Baghead meekly returned Sarah's ring and shuffled back into her wall hole. Back upstairs, amidst the lingering scent of mildew and existential dread, Neil had an epiphany. The ring. It belonged to his mom before he gave it to Sarah. Oh, and he'd also forgotten to mention the 2-minute rule. Chat with your dearly departed for longer than that, and Baghead hijacks the spirit, turning them into a soggy, malevolent mess. Despite this near-drowning experience, Neil was undeterred. He missed Sarah and wanted another go. Iris, understandably, wasn't keen on a repeat performance. Neil, however, wasn't giving up that easily. He pressed more money into her hand, promising it was just a quick goodbye. He gave her his address, just in case she changed her mind, or, needed bail money. Clearly, some people just can't take a hint, even when it's delivered with a side of ectoplasm. Popcorn ready, Katie and Iris settled in for Owen's posthumous tutorial. Baghead, he explained from beyond the grave, is a people pleaser, but only for the person whose name is on the deed. 2-minute chats with the dead only. Any longer, and she'll redecorate their brains with crazy. And the more you use her, the stronger she gets. Worst case scenario, she crawls inside your head and drags you back here. She really, really wants out of that basement. Iris suddenly understood why her dad had ghosted her. He wasn't a deadbeat. He was a demon dodger. Thanks, solicitor, for ruining that perfectly good familial estrangement. Katie, understandably freaked out, voted for a swift retreat. "We need to leave now," she shrieked. Iris, however, had bigger problems than demonic squatters. Like, actual squatting. "Neil's loaded," she reasoned. "One last chat with Sarah and we're set for life." Katie, not thrilled with this plan, but a loyal friend nonetheless, reluctantly agreed to stay. The next morning, Iris marched down to the basement and announced herself as the new landlord. She scrawled "Do not cross" on the stairs, in what she hoped was a demonically binding Sharpie. Then off she went to summon Neil, leaving Katie to secure Fort Spooky. Katie, taking no chances, wedged a wine barrel against the basement door. Because wine solves everything, right? Just as she was about to flee, a picture frame crashed to the floor. 2 random dudes stared back at her. On the back, a date, 1972, and a name, Otto. The other guy, the solicitor. Turns out, Otto owned the pub before Owen. A quick internet search revealed Otto's tragic tale, family tragedy, followed by a DIY ending. Suddenly, Otto seemed to be standing right there. Then poof, gone. Meanwhile, Neil poured his heart out to Iris about his late wife, Sarah, who'd met an untimely end thanks to a careless driver. Devastated, he'd joined a grief group, where he'd learned about Owen's expensive but apparently effective seances. Back in the basement, Neil presented Baghead with a Sarah-scented trinket, and Iris started the 2-minute timer. Poof! Baghead morphed into Sarah. Her last memory a pre-crash blur. Neil, instead of a tender goodbye, launched into accusations of infidelity. Sarah denied everything. The timer buzzed. Baghead's voice, dripping with venom, replaced Sarah's. There was no other man, she hissed. I just couldn't stand you anymore. The basement dissolved into a horrifying recreation of Sarah's accident. A sobbing Sarah appeared in the corner. Iris, cautiously approaching, got more than she bargained for. Sarah transformed into a snarling monster, tackling Iris and hissing, "You're a prisoner here now," before vanishing back into her hole. Neil, oblivious to the escalating creepiness, wanted another go with Sarah. "I need closure," he whined. Iris and Katie, tired of Neil's denial and desperate for a stiff drink, told him to get lost. Later, as Iris drowned her sorrows, a spectral dad appeared. She saw a vision of his Baghead encounter. He'd apologized to his dead wife for abandoning her and Iris, explaining he'd been trapped there for 20 years, cursed to spread disease and death wherever he went. His arson attempt? A desperate bid to protect Iris. But 2 minutes ticked by, Baghead hijacked his wife, and well, crispy dad. At midnight, Iris was jolted awake by strange noises. Katie was missing. Following the sounds to the basement, Iris found not Katie, but her dad, beckoning her towards the wall hole. Iris, sensing something was amiss, "You think?" refused. Dad's face twisted into a grotesque mask. Then, he peeled off his face to reveal Baghead! Iris lunged, trying to strangle the monster. Bad move. The bag had dissolved, and Iris woke up in bed, a rope with a key dangling from it, tightening around her neck. Katie, thank goodness, heard her choking gasps and slashed the rope, saving Iris from an untimely and extremely ironic death by hanging. The next day, their attempts to contact the vanishing solicitor went about as well as a vegan barbecue at a butcher shop. Katie, frantic, urged Iris to flee, but Iris, tasting sweet, sweet ownership, for the first time refused. "You're just jealous," she accused, shattering their already fragile friendship. Katie, heartbroken and furious, stormed out, but worry gnawed at her. She couldn't just leave Iris to become Baghead's next chew toy. She headed to Otto's abandoned house, finding documents detailing his desperate attempts to escape the curse. Meanwhile, Iris summoned Dad via Baghead. He confessed he hadn't left a will, wanting the pub and the Kirsten to disappear with him. Iris raged at his years of secrecy, but he explained he couldn't leave, doomed to bring misfortune upon anyone he approached. "Forgive me," he begged. "Don't bring me back again." Upstairs, a frustrated Iris tried to torch the unburnable deed. The reality of her terrible, horrible, no good, very bad decisions sunk in. She was trapped. Katie returned to the pub, finding it eerily silent. Iris didn't answer her frantic calls, assuming she was in the basement, because where else would you be in a haunted pub? Katie ventured down. There she found not Iris, but Baghead. Katie dropped Otto's files. Baghead, ever the curious monster, swallowed some. Suddenly, Otto materialized, looking rather confused. "Who's Baghead?" Katie asked. Otto, launching into a historical monologue, explained that 400 years ago, some cult called the Brotherhood found a woman who could summon the dead. They tried to exploit her. She said, "No thanks." They burned her as a witch. She, being a bit miffed about the whole burning thing, came back for revenge. The Brotherhood, realizing they'd made a slight miscalculation, trapped her in a tomb. Centuries later, their descendants dug her up, thinking, "Free magic. Bad idea." The more they used her, the stronger she got, leaving a trail of dead exploiters. Mid-monologue, Otto's 2 minutes were up. Baghead took the wheel, and as Katie made a break for it, well, let's just say, Baghead finally found a new playmate. The next morning, Iris woke to Katie's panicked cries for help from the basement. Fear overriding common sense and her dad's explicit warnings, Iris plunged through the ominous wall hole. Inside, a deep, dark cave stretched before her. Following Katie's voice, she found Katie? But as they turned to leave, Iris spotted the real Katie's corpse. Whoops. Fake Katie's head did a 360, revealing Baghead's burlap grin. Iris, displaying a surprising burst of speed, bolted back through the hole just as Neil arrived, whisking her away like a knight in slightly tarnished armor. Upstairs, Neil offered Iris some calming pills. As she swallowed them, she declared Baghead would starve without users. Famous last words. The world swam, and Neil gently urged her to rest. Iris awoke to darkness. Racing to the basement, she heard Neil's voice. He was making a deal with Baghead? He offered himself as her new guardian, begging for unlimited Sarah time. He even scrawled his name on the deed, but the ink vanished. Oops. Iris was still alive. Baghead, morphing into Sarah, dropped a bombshell. She was pregnant when she died. Neil, apparently a controlling jerk, had driven her to flee, drugging her to calm her down. She'd escaped, crashed, and, well, you know. Neil, consumed by guilt, sobbed. "We can still be together," Baghead Sarah purred, "but not if Iris is around." Neil insisted he wasn't a murderer. Oh, honey, Baghead Sarah crooned, you killed both of us. Neil, spotting Iris eavesdropping, took off after her like a rabid chihuahua. Iris, realizing she was in a horror movie, scrambled to her room to call the cops. Dead phone battery, because of course it was. She fled to the roof, Neil hot on her heels. It's not Sarah, it's Baghead, she pleaded. Neil, deaf to reason, attacked. Iris broke free, making a run for the stairs. Neil, proving he was not just crazy but also strong, hurled her off the roof. Splat! Neil, displaying a disturbing lack of remorse, dragged Iris's broken body to the basement. He offered, handing over Iris's phone. Bring her back so she can sign the pub over to me. Baghead swallowed the phone like a gourmet hors d'oeuvre. Iris's spirit appeared. Neil, offering a half-hearted apology, explained his noble goal of reuniting with Sarah. He just needed Iris to, sign over her soul and the pub. Iris Ghost, however, had other plans. Thanks for freeing me, she cackled. Dead Iris is still on the deed. And Baghead possessing Iris's soul? Now I'm my own guardian. Neil blinked, confused. Then Baghead lunged. She shifted into his mother, snapping his hands like twigs. Then into Sarah, bashing his head against the concrete floor. Finally, into Iris, who grabbed a chair and delivered the coup de grace. Baghead, free at last, set the deed and the pub ablaze. Walking out of the basement, a sinister smile stretched across her burlap face. No more guardians, no more rules, just Baghead and a whole world waiting to be terrified. The end. Or is it? So there you have it, folks. Baghead, a heartwarming tale of family reunions, real estate woes, and a burlap sack with a serious anger management problem. Who needs therapy when you have arson, right? Remember, kids, if your dad disappears for 20 years, it's probably not because he forgot to send a birthday card. He's probably just avoiding a sentient, soul-sucking potato sack. If you enjoyed this descent into madness, and who wouldn't, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. It lets us know you appreciate our dedication to summarizing movies that make you question the sanity of screenwriters. Smash that subscribe button and join our legion of horror-loving, humor-appreciating fiends. And don't forget to share this video with your friends, unless they're easily traumatized. Then maybe just send them a cat video. Until next time, stay spooky and try to avoid any pubs with questionable basement residents.